The Mistweaver in Mist of Pandaria is one of the most fun healers to play. From Fistweaving, where you can actually do really good damage that converts into healing, so you're a bit of a melee atonement priest, to just standing back and you and your statue just ploughing big heals into single targets, and the statue isn't just a put it down and forget about it. You need to use it quite cleverly. We'll get to that when we talk about the toolkit, but you can spread hots across the raid, get into melee and do some damage, while also doing incredible AoE healing. The great thing about Mistweaver Monk, where a druid with something like efflorescence or even a shaman with healing rain requires everyone to be stacked, the Mistweaver doesn't rely on the group being stacked at all. They can be spread all over the room. It doesn't matter. You can still heal everybody at the same time with a spell called Uplift, which we'll get into soon. But if they are stacked, you can just do even more healing. What we're going to talk about today is what does the Mistweaver Monk excel at? What does it struggle with? What's the toolkit, useful glyphs and key talents, optimal ways of playing, and then some more advanced ways of playing. I say advanced way of playing because you really want to master your toolkit and how to play a Mistweaver first before you try and do some things that I do. And I'm sure you're a better player than I am. I've just played a monk for a very, very long time, and stance dancing to be able to get more chi, to be able to use certain abilities for free, which ordinarily cost an absolute truckload of mana. It adds a massive reward, but obviously, like anything, it comes at a risk. So firstly, what does the Mistweaver Monk excel at? That's quite a difficult question, because quite honestly, its single target healing is pretty strong, but it's not the strongest. Its AoE stacked healing is pretty strong, but it's not the strongest. Its ability to do damage while it's healing is strong, but it's not the strongest. I think you get where I'm going with that. In terms of just stacking and doing pure HPS, a Resto Druid probably would do more. In terms of just pure big single target healing, you'd probably find even a Resto Shaman can do it better than a Mistweaver Monk. And then in terms of actually doing damage whilst healing, a Disc Priest is probably more effective as well. So while it doesn't excel in one key area, the fact that it's actually strong in all of them, but not the best at any of them, just makes it a really well-rounded healer. If I was to pick one thing it really excels at, it is the fact on fights where people do need to be running all over the place, your AoE healing is barely affected. So if you've got a fight like Garalon in Heart of Fear, where you've got people kiting around the outside of the room, you've got melee at the front of the boss, ranged at the back of the boss, everyone's a little bit all over the place. Your healing as a Mistweaver Monk is barely going to be affected by this whatsoever, whereas all the other healers that are constantly having to move, constantly having to replace their efflorescence or their healing rain are going to be pulling their hair out, and you're just healing like you normally would. So to be fair, outside of it being a real good jack of all trades, its real strength is being able to do exceptionally good AoE healing without the raid needing to be stacked. And then what does it struggle with, or probably a better way to word it would be, what is its weakness? And its weakness really is the lack of raid cooldowns. Now, as a Resto Shaman bringing things like Spirit Link or Healing Tide Totem, they're absolutely huge. As a Disc Priest bringing Spirit Shell or Barrier, again, is absolutely huge. The only real one you get is Revival, which is a raid-wide heal, which that is actually quite unique because things like Tranquility or even Healing Tide are capped at 12 players in 25 man. This will heal absolutely everybody within 100 yards. And it heals for a really good amount as well. And then at the same time, it also gets rid of all magic, poison, and disease effects. Now, this is great, and it's amazing in an emergency, obviously. But there's no damage reduction there, and there's no damage prevention there. The whole raid is still going to take all the damage. You're just going to be able to heal up a lot of damage very quickly. In terms of actual raid cooldowns, again, whilst it's a nice quick instant heal on everyone, a Mistweaver in general just lacks that big damage reduction cooldown that pretty much every other healer's got, except for a Resto Druid. So I would say Mistweaver is more of a throughput healer, the same way Resto Druid is. Resto Druid lacks in the raid cooldown department, but it's got really, really high HPS. Okay, so then let's talk a little bit through the toolkit. So firstly, you've got Summon Jade Statue. Now, this statue lasts 15 minutes, and it's got a 40-yard range. This does two effects depending on whether you're actually healing or whether you're fistweaving. When you're just healing, if you cast Soothing Mist, the Jade Serpent statue will also cast Soothing Mist on an injured ally within 40 yards. Now, the range of it is very important, and the fact that it's a smart heal is also very important. We'll get to that in a second. Now, Soothing Mist is a channeled ability that costs mana plus mana per second. It heals the target for a reasonable amount over several seconds. Now, when you're healing with Soothing Mist, you have a 30% chance to generate 1 chi. Now, firstly, you're going to be generating chi with kind of builders, and then you're going to be spending it on big heals. You have 4 chi by default, or 5 if you use the talent Ascension. Now, while you're channeling Soothing Mist, there's a couple of other things that you can take advantage of. Firstly, Surging Mist. Now, Surging Mist has got a 1.4 second cast time, and it's a pretty big but pretty expensive single target heal that also generates 1 chi. The good thing is, if you're channeling Soothing Mist, Surging Mist will be instant. It'll only heal the person you're currently channeling Soothing Mists on, and it's a very quick way to burst your chi up. So let's say you're on 0, you start channeling Soothing Mists, you've got Soothing Mist that's ticking and getting a 30% chance to generate a chi, and then you're using Surging Mist to plow single target heals into them, which are instant and generating chi. And then you're going to spend that chi on Enveloping Mists. This is a really big hot with my current gear doing 126k over 5.5 seconds, but it then also increases the healing the target receives from Soothing Mist by 30%. The good thing is, while you're channeling Soothing Mist, this is also instant. So basically, while you're channeling Soothing Mist, you can generate chi with Surging Mist, and then you can spend the chi on Enveloping Mist. When you've also got your statue doing Soothing Mist on that same target, potentially, it's actually a lot of single target healing. And to be fair, that pretty much is your way of single target healing. If you're stood at the back just wanting to throw heals around, that is pretty much what you're going to do. You're going to be channeling Soothing Mist on people, Surging Mist to give them a quick heal, and then Enveloping Mist to actually put the hot on and increase the healing from your Soothing Mist. Now, general AoE healing all revolves around Renewing Mist, Thunder Focus T to be able to maximize the amount of Renewing Mist that you have out, which we'll talk about in a second, using big uplifts that cost 2 chi, and then whichever one of your 90 talents you're using between Scottejaye Wind and Chi Torpedo. Now, I've done a full breakdown of all the monk talents in a separate video. I'll put a link to that in the description. You can go and check that out on the channel, or as I say, I'll put a link in the description, but I'm not going to go into super detail on the talents because I've already done that. But between the 2 level 90 talents, you've got Scottejaye Wind, which does a lot of healing, but it's very expensive on mana. But when we get to the advanced tips that I was talking about with potentially changing stances, you can use this for free. And then Chi Torpedo, which again is amazing if you're stacked and you can use it properly, especially in combination with Celerity, where your roll gets 3 charges, meaning Chi Torpedo gets 3 charges. Now, when you use Chi Torpedo, you're just going to Chi Torpedo backwards and forwards through your raid group that are all stacked, and it's going to do incredibly high healing and all absolutely free of cost. The one downside to using Scottejaye Wind versus Chi Torpedo on the basis Chi Torpedo's free is the fact that Scottejaye Wind is not free and it's very expensive. Then going back to the Jade Serpent statue, if you're up close and personal with the statue down, when you deal non-auto attack damage, so basically using your special abilities, which we'll look at in a second, the statue will heal the lowest health nearby target within 20 yards equal to 25% of the damage done. Now, it's important to note that 20-yard range, because if you want your range to be healed, you're going to have to make sure that the statue's not dumped right next to the boss. It will need to be, sort of 15, 16 yards behind you, so hopefully it's going to then get the melee and the range. But now that's going to do 25% of the damage done as healing, and then your actual stance of the Wise Serpent, which is one of 2 stances, which you should be using both at different times, but the general one that you'll spend 95% of the time in increases your healing done by 20%, changes your energy for mana, and gives you hit and expertise equal to 50% of the spirit gained from items or effects, meaning you basically get hit and expertise cap just from being a healer. It also increases haste from items by 50%. Your attack power is equal to 200% of your spell power, but you no longer benefit from other sources of attack power. So you can see all of that comes together to enable you to do melee DPS. But in addition to all this, you gain eminence, causing you to heal the lowest health nearby target within 20 yards for an amount equal to 25% of auto attack damage you deal. So between the statue and your stance, basically everything you do is going to heal for 25% of the damage done. But it does get better than that. Teachings of the Monastery gives you a few different bonuses. Firstly, your Crackling Jade Lightning, which is a ranged ability that you'll rarely use, does 100% more damage now, but it's basically just a ranged lightning attack that you channel. Tiger Palm now does 100% more damage, and when you Tiger Palm, you gain Vital Mists. Now, this reduces the cast time and mana cost of your next Surging Mist by 20%. This stacks 5 times. So after 5 Tiger Palms, you're going to get an instant Surging Mist. Now, we already know what Surging Mist is, but if we look at what the Glyph does as well, your Surging Mist no longer requires a target and instantly heals the lowest health target within 40 yards. So while you're up doing melee DPS, you haven't got to actually target anyone with the free Surging Mist you get. You just hit it and it's going to heal the person that needs it the most. Before we get on to what Blackout Kick does, let's just fly through what the melee abilities are, because you've only got 3 that you need to worry about anyway. Firstly, you've got Jab that generates 1 chi if you're in your healing stance, but if you're in what you would consider your Windwalker DPS stance, which is Stance of the Fierce Tiger, not only does it remove the mana cost because it now becomes energy again, but it also generates 2 chi. Tiger Palm is a spender, which costs 1 chi, and it grants you Tiger Power, causing your attacks to ignore 30% of the enemy's armor. So keeping this up if you're up in melee doing damage is obviously a top priority, because if you're bypassing armor, the more damage you're doing, the more healing your statue and your eminence is going to do. And then finally Blackout Kick, which kicks a blast of energy dealing X amount of physical damage to your target, and it also cleaves up to 4 additional targets for about half the damage. Now, this empowers you with Serpent Zeal. This causes you and your summoned Jade Serpent statue to heal the nearby injured target equal to 25% of your auto attack damage. So now you've got your statue doing 25% of your non-auto attack damage and 25% of your auto attack damage, and you doing 25% of your auto attack damage from Serpent Zeal and another 25% of your non-auto attack damage from your Stance of the Wise Serpent. Now you'll notice there's a lot there that's just auto attack damage. So even just being in melee and maintaining the buffs, but then just healing like normal, all of that auto attack damage, and you're going to be hitting reasonably hard because of all the bonuses that you've got, being hit and expertise capped, getting your attack power from the amount of intellect that you've got, or spell power. Even if at the very least you're maintaining Tiger Power, you're keeping Serpent Zeal up, and then just letting all the auto attack damage go into healing. So back to Blackout Kick from Teachings of the Monastery, you can see that this is the exact buff that it gave to Blackout Kick. Because ordinarily Blackout Kick, if you were something like Windwalker, for example, it is literally just a single target DPS ability that costs 2 chi. As a Mistweaver, you get all those bonuses where it cleaves and gives you Serpent Zeal. And then finally, Spinning Crane Kick. So while channeling Spinning Crane Kick, you also heal nearby injured allies for X amount of healing. And if you hit at least 3 targets, which includes healing targets as well, but yourself is just not included in that, you also generate a chi. So all Teaching of the Monastery gains from this is basically the ability for Rushing Jade Wind or Spinning Crane Kick to do healing. Then Thunder Focus T. So I said a lot of the healing revolves around being able to maximize the amount of targets that have got your Renewing Mist on, and this is how you do it. It's quite a short cooldown, it's only on 45 seconds, and it costs 1 chi. But you receive a jolt of energy, doubling the healing done by your next Surging Mist, or causing your next uplift to refresh the duration of your Renewing Mists on all targets. So the way Renewing Mist works is, you put it on a target and it's got 3 charges. Each time the Renewing Mist heals, it will then travel to the furthest nearby injured friendly target within 40 yards. So as it's jumping, the duration that's on each healing mist is going to be varying. It's not all going to be exactly the same. And because it's only on an 8-second cooldown but lasts around 19 seconds, you can get this out twice, but by the time it starts jumping with a second cast of Renewing Mist, the first ones are starting to run out, obviously. So you can Thunder Focus T and Uplift to get all of them exactly the same again, and then you can cast a third Renewing Mist that will start jumping around. So the key is to maximize the amount of people that you've got Renewing Mist on before you start plowing uplifts into the entire group. And this is why it doesn't matter when people are spread out. Now, because it costs 2 chi, one of your talents being Chi Brew is absolutely amazing, because this instantly generates 2 chi, 2 stacks of Mana Tea as well, and has 2 charges. So you can get 4 chi on demand and then do double uplifts that's going to do a lot of healing. And finally, how you get your mana back. So that's going to be Mana Tea. It restores 4% of your maximum mana per stack of Mana Tea, and you have to stand there and channel it. So you can see at the moment I've got 2 stacks. If I press Mana Tea, I'm just going to stand there and channel both stacks for 8% mana. Now you can glyph Mana Tea, so it has a 10-second cooldown, but it instantly consumes 2 stacks when used. Now this can be particularly good if you're predominantly Fistweaving, because when you're Fistweaving, you're getting Mana Tea stacks pretty quick, and you'll pretty much just use it on cooldown. Because each time you consume 4 chi, you gain a charge of Mana Tea, and you've got a chance equal to your crit chance to generate double the Mana Tea charges as well. Now, quite honestly, mana as a Mistweaver should just never be an issue, because if you're Fistweaving, you also get ways of getting mana back with things like Muscle Memory, so when you successfully jab or hit 3 targets with a Spinning Crane Kick or Rushing Jade Wind, you gain Muscle Memory, which causes your next Tiger Palm or Blackout Kick to deal extra damage and restore 4% mana, which actually makes in most situations Tiger Palm better than Blackout Kick, because if it's single target, it's going to cost you 2 jabs worth of mana to press Blackout Kick once. Unless you're doing something like jab and then you do a renewing mist to get that spreading around, now you've got 2 chi, you can do a Blackout Kick, and it kind of doesn't matter. But in general, when you're up in melee, you're never wanting to waste a muscle memory proc, because every one you waste is 4% mana that you've wasted. And the one cooldown I've not mentioned is Life Cocoon, which is on a 2-minute cooldown, and it's just a massive absorb that you can put on someone. And it also increases their healing that they receive from heal over time effects as well by 50%. But Life Cocoon, the absorb it puts on, is absolutely humongous and actually a really good external cooldown to use on someone in an emergency. You do get another option of a heal through talents, which is Chi Wave, Zen Sphere or Chi Burst, but in general you're going to use Chi Wave when people are not stacked up and Chi Burst when they are. Pretty much as simple as that, and they're both free, so they're worth using on cooldown, because who don't like free healing? Now that's not all the abilities, but they're the main things I want to talk about when it comes to healing, because all of the utility abilities, I'd have covered those in the Monk overview video. I want this to really be focused on Mistweaver because, yes, you get Zen Med, which is an absolutely amazing cooldown. You get the ability to interrupt as well with Spear Hand Strike, which is actually amazing. You can break stuns with Nimble Brew. You can Transcendence to teleport to different places. You can roll around. Oh, and I feel like that was quite a lot of information to try and take in. But that's the Fistweaving abilities. That's the just general healing abilities. Let's just look at useful glyphs and key talents. Now, the main glyphs really are going to be Renewing Mist, where your Renewing Mist travels to the furthest injured target within 40 yards now, rather than the closest target within 20 yards. This is incredibly important to use because by default, Renewing Mists is only 20 yards, so the ranged will never get this spread to them. So this is basically a mandatory glyph. Glyph of Surging Mist, so it acts as a smart heal, so you don't even need to target anyone. Life Cocoon's great for PvP, and Zen Med is pretty much a go-to for me at all times, because Zen Med is a massive cooldown that reduces all damage taken by 90%, and it also redirects up to 5 harmful spells against the party and raid to you. But you're taking 90% less damage, obviously. If you get hit by a melee, it cancels the effect, and of course, without the glyph, if you move, it also cancels the effect. But with the glyph, being able to move around, taking 90% less damage for 8 seconds, is absolutely amazing. And again, Mana Tea is an option if you're predominantly Fistweaving. This can be used even if you're not Fistweaving, but this comes down to personal preference, really. If you want to just be able to instant cast it to get 2 stacks, then great. Whereas I like to use Mana Tea where, let's say I'm on 40-50% mana and the boss is doing a transition, or it runs away and we're waiting for ads to spawn, or, you know, where you get those natural little bits of downtime during a boss fight, then that's a great time to just stand there and cast Mana Tea. You also have a heal called Expel Harm, which is a way of generating 1 chi as well, and it's just a self-heal, which does a reasonable amount of healing on a 15-second cooldown, so if you need both chi and health, because you're not quite on full health, using this to generate the chi is definitely worthwhile. It also does 50% of the damage to a nearby enemy if they're within 10 yards. Now, the glyph just allows you to cast it on someone else instead, but it only does 50% of the healing. Now, quite honestly, 50% of a heal that already don't heal for that much, it's kind of not worth it in my opinion. And then talent-wise, most of the time Tiger's Lust is the go-to option because you can cast it on other people, not just yourself, and it's a 70% movement speed for 6 seconds on a 30-second cooldown. Now, the great thing about this is it also removes immobilization and movement impairing effects, so you can almost use this as an external on your tanks if they need to get out of something but they're slowed, or obviously on yourself when you're moving from A to B as well. We've already spoke about what Chi Torpedo and Rushing Jade Wind do, and pretty much 99% of the time the choice is only between these two, because Zuen is just a 3-minute cooldown where it summons your White Tiger, that basically, as it's doing damage, also does healing. However, with the first row of talents, I would heavily recommend using Celerity to get an extra charge of roll if you're using Chi Torpedo. With the level 30 talents, it's normally between Chi Wave and Chi Burst, and like I said earlier, it really comes down to if everyone's stacked, use Chi Burst, if everyone's spread, use Chi Wave. For level 45, I pretty much never play without Chi Brew outside of dungeons, where in dungeons I'm normally just using Ascension because I pretty much just Fistweave the entire way through. Ascension increases your Chi by 1 and your maximum mana by 15%, whereas Chi Brew is that on-demand 2 Chi and 2 Mana Tea. Power Strikes is also an option, but I've never been a fan of Power Strikes and probably never will be. But every 20 seconds, when you use one of your Chi generating abilities, you're going to get 1 extra Chi. At level 60, it's all CC, so honestly, just use whichever one the fight needs. And for level 75, you've got Healing Elixirs, which is just a small self-heal every 18 seconds, but then really it comes between Dampen Harm and Diffuse Magic. When you look at what I'm using at the moment, this is just what I use for dungeons. potions, so healing elixirs is just fire and forget. I'm going to give myself a little heal. The real option in raids, though, comes between dampen harm and diffuse magic, and really the best way to think about it is with diffuse magic reducing all spell damage taken by 90%, and this is for 6 seconds. It's on a 1.5 minute cooldown, but if there's ever a time in a fight where there is a huge amount of magic damage, you're going to use diffuse magic. If there's ever a time where there's medium amounts of magic damage or a lot of physical damage, you use dampen harm, because dampen harm lasts 45 seconds and reduces the next 3 attacks that you receive when they do equal or more than 20% of your maximum health, and it reduces them in half. Now this can be pretty misleading because it doesn't actually mention magic damage, but magic damage is included in this as well. It's just any damaging attacks that would deal more than 20% of your health are cut in half. I'll be honest with you, as a Mistweaver, 9 times out of 10 I'm running dampen harm because I'd rather a few attacks reduced rather than one big attack more or less negated completely. Unless there's a mechanic that I can absolutely cheese with diffuse magic, then I'll be using that, obviously. Now, when it comes to the optimal way of playing, you're going to keep your statue down, and ranged is very important here. On a fight like Will of the Emperor, for example, if you're healing this as a Mistweaver Monk, you'll already know what position your tanks are going to be in, and they're the ones that take the most dangerous damage. So playing with a range of your statue when you know it'll only heal someone within 40 yards is incredibly important. So while the temptation will be to put your statue near you, now it's going to heal the person on the lowest amount of health, who might not always be the person that you actually want healing with it. So on something like Will of the Emperor, I'll always put my statue behind the tank, because everybody else is actually then going to be out of range, because it's about 20 yards behind the tank, and we're all off at the back of the room dealing with adds. Now the reason for this is because the tank gets really spiky damage. So while that's a specific example of a very specific fight, going by each fight on a fight-by-fight basis, just make sure that your statue is where you actually need it. Because remember, even the healing that it's going to do if you're up doing melee damage is only 20 yards, and the healing it's going to do with Soothing Mist, if you're channeling Soothing Mist, is 40 yards. So using your statue wisely is incredibly important. But once you've decided where you want your statue, it really comes down to using Soothing Mist and Surging Mist to generate chi while you're channeling it, using Enveloping Mist while you're channeling Soothing Mist to put a powerful hot on the target. This is normally how you're going to do your tank healing. If you can be in melee, you should absolutely be there, and you should be maintaining your Serpent Zeal buff, keeping your Tiger Power buff up, and then at the very least, auto-attack him. And then it's really about maximising the amount of Renewing Mist that you can get out on people. Really clever use of Thunder Focus Tea to make sure that you use an uplift just as one of your Renewing Mists are about to expire, so it brings all of the Renewing Mist that you've got out on people back to full duration, and then predicting that incoming damage. When you know there's about to be a big burst of damage, you already want to be sat on 4 chi, and preferably have at least 1 charge of Chi Brew sat there, so at the very bare minimum you can do 3 uplifts all at the same time. And then if you're in melee and you use Rushing Jade Wind to get 1 chi and then a jab directly after, that's a 4th very quickly, and maybe you add 2 stacks of Chi Brew, so it's actually going to be 5. So within like a really short window, you can get 5 big uplifts out on everyone that literally it's just going to top everybody off. And then really, it's rinse and repeat. The only thing I will say when it comes to more advanced ways of playing is using your Stance of the Fierce Tiger. The way I use Stance of the Fierce Tiger is to get lots of chi really fast and to use Rushing Jade Wind for 0 mana. So if you've got Renewing Mist out on everyone and then you switch to Stance of the Fierce Tiger and do 2 jabs, you're going to be on 4 chi. It's worth noting that when you're in Stance of the Fierce Tiger, you're not going to be hitting expertise capped and you're going to be doing slightly less damage, but you're not going into Stance of the Fierce Tiger to do damage anyway. You're literally going there so you get double chi from your jabs, a completely free Rushing Jade Wind out, and then as soon as you come back out, you've got 5 chi to be able to spam uplifts with. And you can do all of this in 1 Renewing Mist window. What I mean by that is when you use Renewing Mist, it's going to be on an 8-second cooldown. Now, within those 8 seconds, you can get into Stance of the Fierce Tiger, jab twice, Rushing Jade Wind, back into your stance, ready to use 1 uplift, and then get Renewing Mist back out and back on cooldown. You could then Thunder Focus Tea into uplift and still have chi left. It's just such a fast way to be able to get chi and pump out so many uplifts. And that's not the only benefit. When you look at how much Rushing Jade Wind costs, it's over 21,000 mana. Now, the fact that when you're in Stance of the White Tiger, it's completely free because it only costs energy, and it's up for those nearly 6 seconds that you can use it, go into your normal stance, and you only really lose like the first tick of healing from it. You can literally AoE heal non-stop and pretty much never even need to use a mana tea. if you heal like this. Now, I'm not saying this is always required, because if it's a particularly short fight, there's no point even worrying about your mana. There's no point worrying about how many jabs that you have to do to get chi. It might be a fight where there's not even that much raid healing going around, so you don't need to do many uplifts. It's definitely used this on a boss by boss basis, which is why I wanted to leave it to the end, because it is a bit more of an advanced playstyle. It's not a set rotation. It's not you need to do this on every single fight. It's just a way that you can get through dungeons without ever needing to drink or ever need to use mana tea. It's a way that you can get through a raid boss without ever needing to worry about mana. And you can even just fist weave normally and sit in Stance of the Wise Serpent while you're fist weaving. And as soon as you get to about 30% mana, adopt this strategy, because then you know for the rest of the fight, every time you use Rushing Jade Wind, it's free. I'll be honest with you, I rarely ever use Rushing Jade Wind where it's going to cost me mana, because I just don't see the point. Because again, if renewing Mist and even Chi Wave are on cooldown, no one needs any emergency healing from Soothing Mist, and there's just no reason not to. And that about sums up the Mistweaver Monk. That took far longer than I expected, and there's probably still another hour's worth that I could sit here and talk to you about it, but that'll be what the podcast is for, when we really deep dive into everything Monk. But as always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.